Greetings, Flosstube. It is Monday, January 18th, 2021. I am coming to you with a redo of my previous part one video. It was going to be a two-parter anyway, but when I went back and I watched the first part of my No New Starts 2021 project video, the audio was terrible. And the only excuse I have for that is I have never actually done a video on a laptop before. Last week was my first time, and I forgot how crappy and built-in laptop microphones are. So over the weekend, I ordered this puppy from Amazon, 30 bucks all in with shipping. And this has clearly made all the difference. You can actually hear me. You might have to turn me down a little bit. It's sitting right over here, right beside the computer. So this should work much better. As I said in my video when I recorded it the first time, it has been forever since I did any cross-stitch videos. I believe it was last June when I did my last one. But there were several reasons. I mean, I spent so much time in 2020 cross-stitching and actually, starting everything under the sun, because what else did I have to do? So that in and of itself was a reason I wasn't making videos, because I would have rather spent my time actually stitching than making videos. But also, our internet connection on our desktop is not the best. For two reasons. First of all, our desktop is old. We got it back in 2008. Since then, we've had to rebuild the hard drive once because we kept getting the blue screen of death. But so the hard drive is probably from 2013, which is still old. And the other reason is our internet connection has never been great. We live in a basement apartment in a rural area. And I mean, I remember when we first moved out here, we couldn't even get pay-per-view TV. Now, when everything went digital and broadband, that was a little different. But we couldn't even order a pay-per-view movie back in the day because the signal couldn't get here through the mountains. So yeah, we've had years of rather objectionable internet connections anyway. So it was twofold: slow internet, bad computer. But I just gave my husband a new laptop for work this Christmas, and so this is his older laptop. I gave him this one about 6 years ago, 5 or 6. I think it was 5. And because he needed one for work, and work was chintzy enough, they weren't going to help him get one. So that year, I was still at Liberty Mutual at that point. I told him, well, when I get my bonus check, we can put that toward a new computer for you. So this computer is just old enough that it was a little bit slow for what he needed it for at work, but it's fine for what I'm using it for here. So I just thought, hey, built-in webcam, don't have to worry about it. So I thought I'd start doing Flosstube videos again. I do have a metric ton of works in progress, WIPs. It's because I started everything last year, but cross-stitch was my saving grace during the lockdowns and all the stupid COVID bullshit. So, and I have a feeling I'm not the only one who started all the things last year. And there is a group on Facebook called No New Starts 2021, which I'm a part of. And it was basically the moderators' attempts to help motivate people who, like me, started everything last year and finished very few things to, not start anything new this year. There is a caveat that I'll tell you about in a little while, and I'm probably going to make a separate video based on that particular work. But it's just, it is what it is. It is what it is. I have 43 WIPs now, which is a lot compared to some and hardly any compared to others. But, so it goes. 2021, so far, it's 18 days in. I haven't even been tempted to start anything new. But I'll show you a brief little bit of haul that I got. That was stuff that I ordered mid-year mid-year and last fall that of course took forever to get here because of all the postal delays. And then we'll just dive in. And like I said, it'll be a two-part video because the WiPs I have here are not all of my WiPs, but maybe half of them. And then I'll do another video and show the other half. But first, let me run and get my haul real quick, and I'll be right back. Alrighty, I'm back, and I actually managed to hit the pause button and not the stop button, which I have been known to do before when I'm trying to pause videos. So thankfully that didn't happen, because I've done that before. But like when I'm 30 minutes in and then I get, yeah, it's not good. All right, so first of all, these needle minders are from madforminders.com. I bought these because I've lost a couple needles in the arm of the sofa recently, and I need something to put my needle on. So, and these all have significance to me in my projects. This one is the preamble to the Constitution, so that one's going on my Queen of Freedom project, which I'm stitching on Fabric Flare preamble fabric. This little baby Betsy Ross, she is going on my Old Glory sampler by Rosewood Manor. I cross-stitch so I don't kill people. Actually, last year when I was posting pictures on Instagram and Facebook of my works in progress, some of my friends would send me memes that say I cross-stitch so I don't kill people, and it's not entirely inaccurate, so I thought that one was appropriate, and I have some friends I'm sure who will think that's appropriate. Then this one, my husband is a collegiate football videographer. Needless to say, last year was interesting for him. So, of course, I love all things heart-shaped and a heart-shaped football. I'm going to put this on a couple of projects that I'm working on that are Valentine-related. And then this one here, you can't read, but it pretty much sums up the way I'm approaching this year with no new starts. It says to-do list: 1, drink coffee; 2, avoid humans; 3, repeat steps 1 and 2 until I finish all my projects. So I thought that one was rather appropriate for considering what I did to myself last year. Now, I did order some fabric. I think it was it was probably mid-fall, because I was trying to decide the way No New Starts 2021 worked. Is it was announced in either at the end of August or the first part of September that this was a thing, and how it worked was you needed to create a photo album of all your WiPs that you plan to work on in 2021 by December 13th. And upload photographs of your progress, because progress was considered 200 stitches or 2 hours, whichever came first. For me, it was a lot of WiPs that I had been working on for over a year, so the 200 stitch thing wasn't an issue. So anything that you didn't declare on the 13th of December was not something you could work on in 2021. So a lot of people in the early fall were going batshit crazy starting everything, and I was one of them, because we knew what we wanted to work on for 2021, and if it was something we needed to start, we had to get off the schneid and do it. So I had ordered some fabric, just not thinking about the time it would take. Picture This Plus, I believe I saw on Hanging Thread LLC. They are 26 weeks behind in processing orders. So I completely just had a brain fart on that. And I ordered some fabric that just got here about a week and a half ago. And I have since dedicated this fabric to my stash pile. One of them I'm going to send to my mother. But the projects I was going to start on this fabric, I decided to start on other fabric I already had, which I probably should have decided first and saved the money, but my brain was not fully functioning by the end of last year to the last quarter of last year, so COVID brain. Hey, everybody gets a pass for any bullshit they did in 2020 as far as I'm concerned, and it looks like it's going into 2021 too, because maybe you ordered fabric you didn't need, or maybe you bought that fountain pen that you kind of had buyer's remorse over later, but whatever it was, you get a pass. because 2020 was some completely crazy crap. So, and if I swear in this video, I'm going to try not to. I promise I'll try not to. But if I do, I apologize in advance. But I try so hard not to swear, but when I start thinking about certain things, there aren't words bad enough to describe them. So, alrighty. So this was a piece of, and I've gotten to where I like stitching on even weave because I like the firmness of the fabric. I have a project that I'm stitching on a Jubilee even weave from Picture This Plus. That's the video that I will do separately, a separate piece. It's, to make a long story short, it's the There's No Planet B Endangered Species Yearly Stitch Along from Clouds Factory. So I'll show that later because I have a very specific project in mind for that one. But that one I started on a Jubilee fabric, and I really just like how it lays in the hoop and it's got some substance to it. Not that I don't stitch on linen regularly, but sometimes I just like a change to an even weave just because if I just sometimes need the stiffer fabric. So this one is a piece of 28 count Lugana, and it's in the color Flash. And it's it's not as bright. You'll see here today I'm going to show you my Chinese Zodiac stitch along that I'm stitching on a piece of orange fabric from Garibaldi's Needleworks. This is not as hyperpigmented as the other orange is, but it is orange. I mean, there's no doubt this is orange fabric. It's just not quite as bright as the other one I'm using. I'm not entirely sure what I'll ever stitch on this. This year it's a moot point anyway because, you know, I'm not starting anything. I would probably do a monochrome piece in black, like do one of those silhouette pieces that are so popular now. Probably do something like that on this. But Flash would be the perfect color if you like stitching Halloween pieces. I don't, but if you do... Halloween's always been a non-starter for me. I mean, I used to dress up at work just because it was kind of fun to do that, but without kids, and, you know, even if I had kids now, they'd be old enough, they just, you know, be hanging out on Halloween. They wouldn't be participating. So Halloween's just one of those things. I'm just like, yeah, it's a day. I'm not too big on Halloween. So this is actually another piece of 28 count Lugana. This one is in the Charm colorway. And this is kind of a dusty grayish mauve, I would say. It's not in your face pink, but it is mauve. Which I think, as far as pink goes, I'm not a fan of like pink, but the more antique versions of pink, mauves, and things like colonial pink and stuff like that, I don't mind. And this is the piece of fabric I'm going to send to my mother. This is a 14 count piece of Ada, and it's in the Heather colorway, and it's kind of, I would assume the underlying base fabric was probably beige, and then it's kind of a purpley gray mottled effect. Really subtle. I mean, I know some people say Picture This Plus fabric is too mottled for their taste. But I have used plain fabrics depending on what I'm stitching, but I like a little bit of flash to give my pieces some substance. So I've got some stuff I've got to mail to my mom this week anyway, so I'm probably just going to send her that. She's the one who taught me how to cross stitch. It was, I believe it was the summer before my senior year in high school, so that would have been the summer of '92. So I'm coming up on my 29th year of stitching this year. And the last thing that I had that she cross-stitched for me was a bride and an angel for my wedding, which I'm coming up on my 22nd anniversary in June. So it used to hang back here. You'll see my venue is different because I'm sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop. That shelf there is all my fountain pen ink and just washi tape, all my stationery related stuff. Now, that gray box didn't always used to be there. That's the junction box, or the circuit breaker for the apartment. They basically had to put that in when our washer dryer died, because our washer dryer was so old that a new one wouldn't fit with the old hookup. But then they got into that, and our washer dryer is over here in the hallway, in a little nook in the hallway. But then they got into it and they realized they were going to have to rewire the entire apartment. So they had to put the junction box there. I need to remember which way I've got to point for the webcam. So they put but the bride used to be hanging there. She's now in my kitchen. But yeah, that was a disaster and a half, all because we flooded the apartment with the busted clothes washer. Not our fault, though. The valve on it that regulated because the old washer, you could regulate the size of the load. So when you would do a large load of laundry, the regulation valve to turn the water off it was broken. So it just kept dumping gallons of water under the floor. And then Bill walked in and said, "Sweetie," he was doing laundry one time the Thursday night before a home game, and he comes in and he's like, "Sweetie, does the carpet feel wet to you?" And I walked over and water literally bubbled up out of the carpet between my toes. I was like, yeah, he is the master of understatement. But yeah, so my lovely cross stitch from my mother used to hang there, but she still got pride of place in my kitchen next to one that I did that says, "God blesses this kitchen, but he doesn't clean it." So true. If he did, my kitchen would be spotless. But anyway, so my last little bit of haul is I joined the Forbidden Fiber Company's Just Flossing Club, which for $30 a month, you get a dozen skeins of their hand-dyed cottons. And it's basically 12 colors that they already produce, and then 2 new ones that haven't been released yet. I have no idea which ones are the new ones, but look at all these beautiful colors. I don't much like the pink, but I'm not a pink person, but if I was stitching something for a little girl who loved pink, I could make it happen. I stitched a ballet silhouette on bright bubblegum pink fabric with black thread for my niece a few years back. So I will use pink for other people, but this is not particularly a color that I'm going to use for myself. Although I might, just to change things up a little bit. I'm doing the Flower a Day Stitch Along by Carolyn Manning, which is in my stash here somewhere to show you. Maybe I'll use it just to be a contrarian. So the colors are Cantaloupe. I love this one. I love this one because I love true reds. I mean, maroon is my favorite shade of red because that's our school colors. But this one's called Big Apple, and it's just a really bright, cheerful red. Slytherin, this one is not as green as I would think of Slytherin being. It's more of a slate blue-green kind of color, but it's pretty. It's just not exactly what, when I think of Harry Potter and I think of Slytherin and the house colors, it was like emerald green and black, but it's still a pretty thread. This one, I'm not sure how this is it'll be interesting to see if the colorways are short enough to do any really good variegation, but this one's called Prism. And it's basically blue, pink, yellow, orange, and a bit of green. And I know they say when you use threads like this that are variegated, you should, for the best variegation, do each X one at a time. To me, that is absolute bull crap. No, I'm not going to take the time to do each X. It takes me long enough to stitch as it is. I'm doing what I think is called the Dutch method. I never knew it had a name. It's just how I learned to stitch. I go across the row and then come back and cross my stitches. I go left to right and then right to left. Ain't nobody got time to stitch one dinky-ass stitch at a time, especially when you're doing some of the big projects I am. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. But if the colorways are short enough, it shouldn't matter if you do the Dutch style of stitching. So we'll see how that one shapes up. Probably going to use that one in the Flower a Day as well. This one is called So Jaded. It's kind of a bluey green, but more green than the Slytherin. Swanky Gray. You need neutrals. You need neutrals in your specialty threads. And I like having the neutral grays. Now this one I'm glad I have, because in the Flower a Day stitch along, I don't have a lot of green specialty thread for whatever reason, because green is my second favorite color behind purple. So I needed more greens for stems and leaves. And this one, that one, pistachio. This is the bubble gum that I mentioned a minute ago. I might give it a try just to see what it looks like stitched up. Olympic, which is a blue. Not a true blue, but it's kind of like a bluey gray. I like that. Not every color has to be in your face, like this next one, Sapphire. Now that's a true blue. That's a true blue one. Then we've got Grape Soda, which I have a lot of purple thread in my stash. Not gonna lie, purple is my favorite color. In fact, my favorite shades of purple are the ones that trend towards the blue and not the red side of purple. So the piece that I stitched for Stephanie Powers, and if you haven't seen that video, it's a little bit further down in the video, but the piece that I stitched for her was the Belinda Carl's Nace Alphabet Zoo. And I stitched it on behalf of her and the William Holden Wildlife Foundation. I stitched that one using my all-time favorite bluish purple. It's the Classic Colorworks Granny Annie, and it's beautiful. It goes from like this rich blue all the way, variegates down to almost like a bluish black, but it's really kind of a purpley blue. That's my all-time favorite color. It took 26 skeins of that to stitch that piece. But yeah, that was still, believe it or not, that finished piece ended up in Kenya at the foundation. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that because I still, over a year later, can't believe that actually happened. It was November 30th of 2019. And it's just like, when I think about it, I mean, maybe I was naive, but I had no idea that that was going to happen. She promised me she would get it to Kenya somehow. I think she had to take it out of the frame and pack it in her luggage and everything and make it work that way. So it probably was not the easiest thing she's ever had to deal with on a 17-hour flight across from LA to East Africa. But, you know, I had no idea. If I'd have known, I probably would have done it differently somehow. But anyway, I'm totally digressing and fangirling over that one. But anyway, the last color is Fawn, which is a nice tan, nice neutral. So that's all I have for the stash. Like I said, it was stuff that I got last year that, had I actually been thinking clearly, I probably wouldn't have ordered, because I would have known it wasn't going to be here in time. But that's okay, because that's stash for future projects. And that was the nice thing during the worst of the pandemic, when we couldn't go out or we weren't allowed to go into places, you know, places were closed. At least if I wanted to start something new, I could generally kit it up, because I had fabric and I had most of the floss, and then I could just order floss online if I needed it, which was easier said than done. But it was totally easier said than done, but you know, on some level it kind of worked. So that was nice to have a stash of threads and things. But now I'm just going to start going through my projects. Probably not going to see a whole lot in the way of finished projects. I can think of maybe 4 or 5 out of the 43 that should have probably already been finished. But I started all the big things last year, which, not my best hour, like I've said, but I started... let's see, Rain Dance, Dilemma, and Knights Templar, or Templar Prophecy from Long Dog. I had already started a few years back Old Glory Sampler from Rosewood Manor. In 2018, at the end of 2018, I started a tree by itself. I've still got those both on the hoop. And then I added Autumn Quakers, all by Rosewood Manor. And let's see, what other big ones? Oh, Heaven and Earth Designs. I have Mini Crystal Angel that I started about a year or so ago, and then I added to it Mini Autumn's Promise. So I've got some massive ass pieces. I mean, I don't care that it's a piece that's going to take me several years to finish. I don't care about that, because, you know, the eternal question for cross stitchers is, are you a process stitcher or a progress stitcher? Meaning, do you stitch, usually that's a, do you stitch monogamously or do you have multiple projects going on? The answer for me is multiple projects, with the exception of the one I did for Stephanie and the one I did for Robert Wagner. Those are the only two pieces in nearly 30 years of stitching that I've stitched monogamously from start to finish without touching anything else. But for me, it's about the process. I'm very much a process-oriented person in my life anyway. If you look at the shows that I watch on Create TV, for example, This Old House. Well, I'm in an apartment. I don't need to know squat about home improvement, but I love that kind of stuff. Quilting shows. I need a sewing machine and quilting skills like I would need a slap up the side of the head. So ergo why I can't finish my cross stitches the way I would like to, because I have no sewing machine skills. But I watched Nancy Zeman religiously. What's the other one? Quilting Arts, the one with Susan Brubaker Knapp. I just like watching people create things. Cooking shows. I watched cooking shows before cooking shows were cool when I was a kid, and I watched them all on PBS. So I'm very much a process-oriented person. To me, the process is the fun part. The creating is the fun part. I always feel a sense of letdown when I finish a piece, because it's like, oh, well, I had so much fun doing that. And like I've said before, most everything I've ever stitched in nearly 30 years has been a gift. So there's fun in giving it to the person, especially if they don't know that I stitch, which is probably not too many people in my inner circle right now. Most everybody knows I do. But for those people who don't, it's I love to see that moment when they're like, oh my God. That was the best part of meeting Stephanie, was seeing her reaction to what I did for her. I think she was completely blown away. Of course, I was too, for, getting to meet her. But I don't think she expected that at all. And I can't imagine that I can't imagine that anybody else that worked in the theater would have expected that either. It was her play that she did with Harry Hamlin. It was just the two of them playing 3 separate sets of siblings across a 5-year span. It was really actually a very cool way to tell a story. One of the kids on the board of the William Holden Wildlife Foundation wrote the play and directed it. He's also the son of her middle school English teacher. So, keep it in the family, so to speak. But, that whole, just the way they told the story. So it was her and Harry Hamlin, and then all the people who worked at the theater. It was a tiny little place off Broadway. It was on 59th Street. But, I'm sure that Harry Hamlin saw it too, which I've been in love with him since the LA Law days. So, and he's still very easy on the eyes. Not gonna lie. He was very, very gorgeous in the play. So, just thinking about the broad reach that my cross stitch has and has had for people. I've got cross stitch in other states across the country. I just never thought about having a cross stitch on an entirely different continent. But I'm rambling now, aren't I? I'm totally fangirling. But Stephanie is so awesome. It's hard not to. All right, let's dive in. I'm nearly half an hour in, and I haven't showed you any of my projects. This first one is so freaking epic. It's one of my massive ones. It is the Long Dog Sampler Dilemma. I am stitching it on a 32 count fabric flare in the melted crayons? What is the colored pencil colorway? And I'm stitching it with Mrs. Sada's silk in the oxide color. The border is taking forever, but the premise of this one is it's completely different than any other piece I've ever worked on, because the lady who designed it, Ms. Long Dog herself, I don't know her name, but Long Dog Samplers, what she does is she created a border, it would be like a 9-patch square if you were a quilter. She created a border, and then she created a 9 square border, and then she created 16 motifs. So you choose which motif you want where. And you could see that on the pattern I've been writing down which motifs I'm using. So the first one is going to be the castle. It's going to be a big one. It's 228 by 225 stitches, so it's going to be a pretty big square. But you can see I've been working on the border. I've pretty much got the border across the top finished for the first page. And I started doing my first square, which is the castle. This one, I don't know what it is about fabric flare. Fabric flare, I may have mentioned in a previous video, is screen printed fabric. So you can see it's white on the back and screen printed on the front. But it is the most easy to use fabric, even at the 32 count level. I'm not sure what it is, but I absolutely love working on this 32 count fabric. And I absolutely love the Mrs. Sada's silks. Mrs. Sada's is a company, well, not a company, it's a cottage industry, an Etsy cottage industry from Madrid. And she has absolutely amazing hand-dyed silk threads. She also dyes like sock yarns and things like that. But oh my God, at least I think she does. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but those colors. So last year, Long Dog created a pattern that was offered for free on her website for a week that was called Pandemic. And it was massive. It was like 350 some stitches by 300 something. It was this massive thing. And I was like, you know what? I think it's great that the designers were trying to reach out to the cross-stitch community during the worst of the pandemic by offering free patterns. But I don't want to stitch shit that's going to remind me of the dumpster fire that 2020 was. So I looked around on her website, and this one caught my eye because you can design your own. I mean, I think she said something, I can't remember how many different hundreds or thousands of permutations of that pattern you could have. But it's everybody who's going to stitch that one is going to end up with their own design. So that's, to me, being a part of the design process in the squares that I picked was really cool and made that one really stand out for me. So that was one of the 3 Long Dogs that I worked on. Now this one was late in the game, but I decided, I actually got this one in under the December 13th radar. December 4th is World Cheetah Day. And I know this because, as I've said, supporting Stephanie Powers and the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, he actually tamed a cheetah once, back before the foundation even existed, back when it was the Mount Kenya Game Conservancy, which was the part he founded in the 50s. And then the foundation was what Stephanie founded after he died, because they had always talked about needing an education component to the conservancy projects they worked on, because, it's well and good to do captive breeding programs and reintroduce animals into the wild, but if people aren't educated on why they shouldn't kill them and why they're important to the ecosystems, then you're just shit out of luck, because you're going to just reintroduce a vulnerable species into the wild and people aren't going to respect it. So that's where the education center, the foundation part of it, came into. But anyway, so I digress. He had tamed a cheetah at one point, and there are pictures of Stephanie and her mom with the cheetah, and there's pictures of William Holden with the cheetah back from the mid-70s. And December 4th is World Cheetah Day. So I pulled out, I had this pattern book for ages and ages and ages. This is probably one of the oldest pattern books I have. But I'm going to stitch the cheetah and her baby. Beautiful regal animal. And by the way, yes, not to digress, but I saw Wonder Woman 84 and I have real problems with the character of Cheetah. Oh, not even going there. I was Barbara Minerva in high school, but I didn't need the popular chicks to define my self-worth. So, and I may have totally missed the point of Barbara Minerva, but that's just how I feel about that particular. But then again, Cheetah realized at the end that selling out to the popular girls was not the way to go. So she was redeemed from her bad life choices in the end. But anyway, so I'm digressing. But at least now I can say that the last movie I saw in the theaters was not the 1933 King Kong, because we saw that movie in the theaters last March, right, the weekend or so before the lockdown. And I thought if I couldn't get back to a movie theater, that was going to be pretty sad to say that that was the last movie I saw in the theaters. So we did go see Wonder Woman 84 this past Saturday. It was all right. I mean, I'm not much of a comic book person anyway, but I mean, it was okay. I just had problems with Barbara Minerva. Not problems with Kristen Wiig. She played the hell out of it. I mean, she's a good actress. It's just the character I didn't like. So I'm digressing. So I had to get 200 stitches in this so that I could count it for No New Starts 2021. So I thought about the best approach, and I was just like, okay, how do you stitch a cheetah? One spot at a time, right? So that's what I've gotten done. It's basically what did I just do with the pattern? Oh, I put it back. It's basically the upper left quadrant of the cheetah's head and upper body. So it's this part. I'm going to do the top part of the body first. Now, the original reason I had this pattern book was because when I was in college, I'd only been stitching 3 or 4 years. And my husband, then boyfriend, he was 2 years ahead of me in college, and he graduated and went to take a grad assistant position as the videographer for the University of Memphis. And they were the Tigers. They still are. And I thought after 3 years of stitching and not any knowledge of anything bigger than, say, maybe a 5x7, I thought I was going to stitch this puppy for him. Needless to say, it never happened, but that's why I had the book. Yeah, but I could stitch the tiger now. But back then, with my limited skills and my not stitching on linen and stuff, that would have been... I started it with the best intentions of making something for my boyfriend's apartment, but it didn't happen. But that was okay, because 26 years later this fall, we're still together, so... And I have stitched him stuff since then. That just was a huge project that was not happening when I was too new to cross stitch, so... Alrighty, so this next one is really adorable. I need to get back to it. I was working on it about a week or so ago. This is the Clouds Factory, not Clouds Factory, Frosted Pumpkin Stitchery Chinese Zodiac, which was their stitch along for last year. And this is the one that I'm stitching on the Garibaldi's Needlework orange fabric. What was the name of that fabric? It is... if I have it written down. I try to write down the fabrics and the start dates for all my projects. This was Garibaldi Needleworks Sunburst 28 count Monaco. So this is another even weave. And I like the feel of it in the hoop. But this is Sunburst. You can see this is a lot brighter version of the other fabric. This is not even quite the first part of the stitch along. Well, the first part was the center part. This year is Year of the Ox, which is the year of my husband's Chinese zodiac. Next year is Year of the Tiger, which is mine. I actually looked into the Chinese zodiacs of my family. My father-in-law happens to share the birthday and age with Stephanie Powers, so they're both Year of the Horse, which, by the way, is very cool because William Holden and Robert Wagner were Year of the Horse too, because it goes in 12-year cycles, so it was 1918, 1930, and 1942. I believe my mother was Year of the Pig. My sister, being 76, was Year of the Dragon. I can't remember if my niece was Year of the Dog. Someone in the family. I'd have to go back and look. But I thought it would be cool to try to put my family's zodiac years in here. And 2020 was Year of the Rat, which was actually a very appropriate symbol for last year, I think. But yeah, like I said, this little guy, the ox, that's my husband's, and then the tiger. And I've got the rest of the pattern printed out. I love the rabbit. Oh my God. It's going to be so cute to stitch. It's a little yellow rabbit. You know, and it just fascinates me how the Chinese zodiac differs from the Western zodiac. But the same rules apply, that there are certain zodiac signs that that astrologers feel shouldn't get along. It's not a tiger and an ox, but in Western astrology, two Leos should never be able to work. And I'm like, yeah, right. Because my birthday's August 5th and my husband's is the 6th, but he's a year older than me. And people always tell me, well, you shouldn't work as two Leos. That's two strong-willed personalities. It shouldn't work. And I'm like, well, maybe it shouldn't, but it does. So I'm not too much into astrology, but I do love the symbolism of the Chinese zodiac. And actually, I think with me being a fire sign and being a Leo, it explains a hell of a lot about my temperament. Let me just say. Now, this is one of the ones I should have finished this year. I probably should have finished it last year, but, you know, sometimes stuff happens and other projects get started. This one was my first heartstring samplery pattern that I purchased, but it definitely won't be my last because I love Beth Twist's sense of humor and I love her somewhat vintage-looking patterns. This was the Coffee Drinker's Confession from the Magical Elixir series. This was part 5 of it. And it's me. I mean, I don't have a problem with coffee. I have a problem without coffee. And sadly, Bill has been with me long enough to know that this is 100% truth. He's the only, well, let's put it this way. He's the one who sees me when I go without coffee more than anyone else. And he knows it's not pretty. So I started this last year. It's a fun one. I kind of like the snark. I started it on July 9th of last year, 32 count Jazz Lugana. I seem to be stitching on a lot of even weave lately, but that's not a bad thing. This was a remnant that I had in my stash from another project. And this is as far as I've gotten, so I can finish that. The bird gave me a bit of a fit. It went into timeout for a while because I stitched the bird in the wrong color. But all I really need to do is finish the border, the coffee bean border, and finish the other side of it. There's another, what is on the other side? There's another bird and an urn full of flowers on the other side. So, but I just love this. And I love how it's stitching up on this fabric. And I love just kind of the muted sort of pseudo sampler vintage colors that kind of make it look vintagey, but then it's got modern snark to it. But yeah, totally have a problem without coffee. Ain't nobody want to see me without coffee. It's not pretty. I've only had 1 cup this morning, but I knew that if I had my traditional second cup, I'd be having to stop this to go to the bathroom every 5 minutes, and y'all don't want to see me pausing every 5 minutes. So I haven't had my second cup. I try never to drink coffee after lunchtime because the acid in it makes me kind of ill if I drink it too late. And one thing I've also noticed, if I get a flavored coffee from Dunkin' and I try to drink it in the afternoons, it's usually way too sweet because I don't use sugar in my coffee. So as a general rule, those sugary things from Dunkin' and Starbucks and all kind of make me a little bit ill. So I just rather make my own coffee. Now this one, oh, I forgot this was another long dog that I started. So I've actually got 4 long dogs on the needles because I've got Dilemma, Templar Prophecy, Rain Dance, and this one. Now this one I may have to start over because I'm not sure this piece of fabric is going to be big enough. I am obsessed with all things heart-related. Valentine's is my favorite holiday. I know there's so many people out there who poo-poo it, and oh, Valentine's is just it's a marketing gimmick to get people to spend money when they shouldn't have to and all that. Well, yeah, okay, cynical naysayers aside. I just love the idea of a day dedicated to love. You know, not just romantic love, but loving your family and your friends. Because in my opinion, there is a huge ass shortage of love in this world. You can see my hearts back there. One of them is a heart-to-heart thing that a friend of mine made me, and then the one underneath is a canvas I bought at Pier 1 before they closed. And then, you know, romantic Paris. My niece gave me that. She bought the Paris one at Busch Gardens one time for me when in Williamsburg when she was a kid, and gave it to me for Christmas, I think. And I speak French, so that's that's pretty appropriate. But I'm just all about the romance, you know. I think we need more love. I think we need to show more love. I think we need to be more respectful of how people define love, whether or not it's what we agree with. You know, so to me, there's just a shortage of love in the universe. So this was the perfect one. Now, the very sad part of this one is that the designer, she designed this after her husband passed away. And it was meant to be her tribute to him. But I actually call this and the reason I'm so obsessed with Heart to Heart is because it was so romantic. I mean, come on. It was not a crime story with romance elements. It was a love story with crime drama elements. Y'all got to watch it. I know it's not on Cozy TV anymore, but it's still on cable. Or hell, just join the Heart to Heart Lovers group. All 111 episodes are posted on Facebook. So anyway, I digress. But this is Mot d'Amour, Words of Love. And I love that it has several different languages on it. But I call this the heart-to-heart pattern because in heart-to-heart canon, Jonathan and Jennifer, their logo was always a double heart, and there's a double heart in there. And also part of it was they called each other darling, and the word darling is in there. So this is, in my opinion, the heart-to-heart sampler. So the one I'm working on right now, I just upper left-hand cornered the thing, and I'm not doing the border around it because it's just a single row of stitches. So this one, the Je t'aime heart, which is I love you in French. So I started it, and I'm using, yet again, Mrs. Sada's silks. I'm hoping this piece of fabric isn't, I don't think it's too small, but looking at the pattern, I'm not sure. This was another spur of the moment start. So I've got the heart outline. A lot of what's in the center where it says Je t'aime, I mean, the Je t'aime is stitched, but there's a lot of back stitch in there. So I was just working on getting the heart. So yeah, don't get me started about my obsession with Heart to Heart. Best TV show ever and most romantic couple ever in television history. There will never be another couple as romantic and sweet as Jonathan and Jennifer Hart. Now, they did set the bar extraordinarily high for those of us living in the real world as far as romance goes, but, you know, setting the bar extraordinarily high since 1979. But I take it as a compliment that some of my friends in the fandom say that I found my Jonathan. Because I did. I would have never thought of it that way, but yes, I did. Not gonna lie, he is my Jonathan. We're just a poor man's version of Jonathan and Jennifer. We don't have the dog, we don't have the money. And trust me, we don't have the copious amounts of sex. But other than that, we are the hearts. Okay, so this is the stitch along I was talking about where I'm using all my specialty threads. I started it on December 5th of 2018, shortly after I lost my job with Liberty Mutual. It's a 32 count Jobelin fantasy dyed fabrics, which Danielle, the lovely stitcherista, gifted me a while back. And it's, I know somewhere back in 2019 when I posted a video showing My Heart is Full of Flowers, which I actually stitched in 2018 to finish for our 20th anniversary in 2019. That was the grandfather of this one. But it's beautiful. Oh my God. If you love hearts and you love flowers, My Heart is Full of Flowers is probably one of my, well, it's definitely in my top 5 favorite Carolyn Manning patterns. I would say it is the top one because it's a heart and it's beautiful. I was actually going to send that to Jill Rensel in 2019, or in, yeah, 2019, to have it framed by Jill Rensel. But then, of course, with the job loss and all that, no money, it's still in my unfinished bin, but it will get finished someday. But it was the 20th anniversary gift to Bill. And it was beautiful. But that one, My Heart is Full of Flowers, was the grandfather to the Flower a Day stitch along. And I think since she released the original Flower a Day, which this one is, I think she's released it in a couple of different colorways. But this is basically very, very, very close to the first page finish. You can see I stitched it on a kind of pinkish fabric. So maybe I need to just shut up about hating pink. I don't know. And I'm using all different specialty flosses. I mean, just Classic Colorworks, Guest, Jody Redesigns. Now I've got some Forbidden Fiber Company threads to throw in. It's just a mishmash, but I thought it would be cool to do it that way and just see where the spirit takes me when I'm stitching flowers. So I do need to get back to this one. I was doing this one as a stitch along with Cajun Stitcher on Instagram, but she blew my doors off and finished it, so not so much a stitch along anymore, but it was an attempt. So yeah, I really love this one. I like experimenting with different fibers and different, I'll go ahead and put those in there because that's what I'll use them for. Alrighty, what is next? Okay, talking about hearts. This one is a little one I need to go back to because I can finish it in a couple days. It's nothing too big. This isn't the first one of hers I stitched. I started stitching, but I just, like I said, I'm obsessed with anything with hearts, Valentine's related, anything like that. Because I'm a sap. I'm a sucker for romance, okay, folks? Not gonna lie. So that's why Valentine's, it's always been my favorite. So maybe it was a no-brainer. I'd get addicted to Heart. I don't know. So this is the JBW Designs Alphabet Hearts. Her little string, her little sampler. And this is what I've gotten done. I am stitching it on a remnant of 32 count Winter Moon linen that I had in my stash. And I absolutely adored this one. I actually like this one better than even the 4th of July one because the calligraphy type style of the letters. I love that A. I don't like pink, but whatever. Anyway, and all the little hearts, all the stylized hearts. I guess you can't be a fan of Valentine's Day and say you hate pink, but... So this is what I have done so far, and it's not a hard stitch. I actually really like stitching the letters, the D and E over here. In the Gothic, like the Old English, kind of old calligraphy script. And the heart. So yeah, I plan to work on this, focus on this one more the closer we get to Valentine's Day. Probably starting February 1st, I'll work on that one, more of a focus. It won't take long to finish. So there's that one. Ticks all my buttons for the romantic side of things. And I do like stitching Valentine related things. I haven't done a lot of Valentine stitching, but I'll get there. So let me see. Okay, this one is a piece that if I stitched it the way Sweet Little Erica Michaels meant for it to be stitched on 40 count gauze, I would be blind right now and never stitch another thing. But cooler heads prevailed, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to stitch this on a piece of fabric I've got. But I absolutely love the sentiment. This is for a dear, dear friend of mine who lives in New Mexico. We really, really became close last year during the pandemic, and we've kind of tried to be each other's support system. And we talked about, you know, we've talked about what it means to support other women and how to stand up for other women without tearing them down or trying to make yourself feel superior in some way. And I saw this on someone's video, on someone's Flosstube. I can't remember who. I'm sure it was it might have been the Inspired Needle. I don't know. But it is Crooked Crown by Erica Michaels. And it says, be the woman who fixes another woman's crown without telling the world it was crooked. And I just think that's an important sentiment. I mean, women spend too much time tearing each other down, which is probably why I've always had more male friends than female friends, but that's beside the point. But I just think that this is an important sentiment. But it was meant to be stitched on 40 count gauze. These eyeballs don't do anything over 32 count linen, so I just decided I was going to use a piece of, because my friend's favorite color is red. And so I had this piece of fabric that I dyed. Back in 2018, I got into ice dyeing fabric. And I used Procyan dyes, and I turned my bathroom into a lab that looked like Walter White was going to step out of it any minute. And, you know, when my husband was away at football games and I didn't have to worry about him needing to get up and take a shower the next morning, I would like set up my racks in the bathtub and do my ice dyeing in the bathroom. And this was a piece of just regular white 14 count Aida, and I believe I used burgundy, orange, I'm not sure what other colors ended up seeping in there from something I was dyeing next to it, but I really like the way this fabric turned out. So I am using the called for Weeks Dye Works. I'm just not masochistic enough to use 40 count gauze. So this will be her birthday present. Now, I could not get this upper. It's supposed to have the upper border and then come down the side, but I could not get, for some reason, I've frogged the upper border 2 or 3 times, and I couldn't get it to meet up with the edge of the crown to start coming down the edge. So guess what? I'm not going down the edge. I'm going to leave off I'll do the horizontal borders, but I'm leaving off the vertical borders. And you know what? It's not going to matter what the hill of beans difference. The sentiment is still the same, and it's still going to be the same pattern. But I couldn't figure out, and I still have no idea why. Because it's simple 3 down, 3 up, zigzag pattern across the top border. And I just can't for the life of me make it line up so that it reaches across the right way. So I'm not going to do the vertical borders. Easy enough. Sometimes you got to fudge it. Sometimes you can find your mistakes, and sometimes you just say, screw it. It's my interpretation. You know, I mean, so, you know, that's the one thing I think I've learned over my time cross-stitching. Is you just cannot get too hepped up on it being perfect, because A, who's going to know? I mean, unless you're giving a pattern that you've stitched to someone who has also stitched that pattern and can look at it and say, oh, you screwed it up there. Who the hell is going to know if you made a mistake in the first place? Second of all, it's supposed to be a peaceful thing, not a source of stress. So, you know, don't stress, folks. Just don't stress. It's okay. It's going to be fine. If you have to work around a mistake, I mean, some mistakes are big enough that you can't. But most mistakes in cross stitch, I mean, like when I do my symmetrical stitching, which I'll show you here in a few minutes, some of my symmetrical stitching, yeah, you can't fudge your way around that, because if it doesn't match up on both sides. But if you're not doing something symmetrical, just find a way to make it work. Don't sit there and frog things 50,000 times because you want it to be perfect. It's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not perfect as humans, right? So now this is one that I should have had done already and I didn't, but I'm going to finish it this year, probably in the next few weeks. This is the Clouds Factory Lincoln quote. My husband almost could have been a double major in mass comm and history in college, and he loves Lincoln, so, and I love the quote. I love the quote. I try to remind myself of this, especially in this day and age, to not shoot my mouth off, just keep things to myself because, you know, you don't want to be the one who opens your mouth and proves what somebody thinks of you. So temper it, you know. So better to remain silent and be thought a fool than speak and remove all doubt. And I can't remember, this was, I think, a piece of Picture This Plus Parfait linen. And I just thought it would be cool. So, you know, I've got a lot of this done. I actually worked on this a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, most of the words are finished. And I just need to stitch Lincoln will go on the right side across from the rose. And I don't know if I'm going to put the little bit of the border in or not. I may not because there's not a whole lot of a border. It's just like the little framework on the edges. So I'm not sure. I'm just going to finish this and see how it looks. And then I might go back and do that if I think it needs that little grounding piece of the border. But I'm not sure I will. And I can finish this. This I started in 2017. I should have finished it by now. Clouds Factory patterns should not take that long to finish because they're small. Well, not all of them. I'm misspeaking. They have some epically big patterns. I'm kind of glad I didn't take the time to stitch the Game of Thrones ones for my brother-in-law, though, because he's soon to be my ex-brother-in-law. And it's not an animosity thing. It's as close to an amicable divorce as any can be, but still, I'm glad I didn't. Because the Clouds Factory, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, it's amazing. It would have taken forever. Probably still be stitching on the darn thing. Now this one is from a man I saw on Instagram who runs a cross stitch shop. I can't remember where he is, but he goes thrifting and finds a lot of old needlework stuff. And he had this one for sale. This one is from 1979 by Tricia Sapinski. And it was called Fruit Basket Sampler. Now, I'm not necessarily one to stitch samplers per se in the true sense of the word, but I really loved that fruit basket and I thought it would be great in my kitchen. So he actually found this kitted up. So this is a 41-year-old kit. It had all the thread. It had all the DMC. The thread's in fine condition. It had the Ada fabric. So I was like, you know, why not? This is kind of cool. It's, of course, one of the hand-drawn designs because clearly people weren't using computers to do cross-stitch patterns back then, but I've got a little bit of it done. I kind of like the font style of the lettering, too. Kind of that old-school sort of cursive sampler font thing. I don't know how to describe it, but I know it when I see it, but I can't really describe it. But it's kind of like that old school cursive style lettering. So yeah, that one. This one is a nice one when I need a break from something that is really small, because the 14 count Ada. I like the colors too. They're all kind of vintagey, like sampler colors. So I really like the browns and the reds. So it's just been a fun little stitch. Something to work on when I need a brain break from a real serious, heavily counted piece or something that's on small fabric. So there's that. Now this one is the one I was telling you about, symmetrical stitching. This one I started at the end of 2018. I'm almost finished with the 5th page. It's a 15-page pattern. This was one that I had in my stash for a while, and I just decided, as badly as 2018 ended for me, I needed something beautiful to do. So, Karen Kluba's a tree by itself. It's got Pueblo Indian verse on it that says, hold on to what is good, even if it is a handful of earth, and hold on to what you believe, even if it's a tree which stands by itself. You may have heard me, if you've seen other videos, talk about the importance of trees in my life. My father worked in the paper industry for over 40 years. It was our bread and butter. It gave me and my sister a lot of experiences and things that we were very fortunate and blessed to grow up with. So I'm stitching this as a tribute to my father, and as a tribute to the important role trees have played in my life. My father was kind of all about the sustainable forestry back when the movement was just starting. As he progressed through his job over the years, he ended up working with the EPA attorneys and doing more of the environmental work. He was the technical director at the plant. So he was kind of the number 3 person on the management side. He didn't actually technically work in the paper mill. He was in management, but he was like the number 3 at the plant. And, you know, he taught me about recycling and trees being a sustainable resource, which is why when we had choices between paper and plastic, I never chose plastic. And to be honest, my dad taught me this, and I point blank asked him one at one of my local grocery stores one time, not too long ago, maybe last year. The only reason paper bags went out of vogue was because plastic was cheaper to produce. And I asked one of the cashiers at one of the grocery stores that I frequent that started bringing paper bags back. She was like, "Do you want paper bags?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well, they're 10 cents a piece." And I was like, "That's fine. I'll pay 50 cents a piece for something I can recycle. You can't put dead dinosaurs back in the ground." And I said, "Let me just ask you this. Isn't it because plastic was cheaper and didn't cut into a company's bottom line? Isn't that why plastic became big?" And she was like, "Yeah, I guess so." I was like, "No, I know so." So, you know, support the paper industry, first of all. Support recycling. Support sustainable forestry by using paper bags. They may cost you a little bit, but think of the overall cost of a plastic bag. You can't put dead dinosaurs back into the ground. You can't recycle them, at least not very easily. I don't know about you, but when I get plastic bags and I put them under the sink in my kitchen and remember to take them the next time I go to the store, they never get taken. So what do? They end up getting thrown out. No, I'm not trying to lecture. I realized but trees are very important to me. So this is, I'm going to have to stand up here and scooch back to get this whole thing in the, it's almost a half yard of just plain white Zweigart linen. This will be the 4th page finish coming up over here. But as you can see, my point about symmetrical stitching, you have to frog these things. And I have had to frog at least one tree on every page. So the most stubborn one being, for some reason, the checkerboard square one there. I don't know why, but I've had to frog that one the most of any of the mistakes I've made. And the problem is with that dark green on white fabric, you leave traces of the color behind. So that one was extraordinarily frustrating. But I should get the page finish done. Like I said, I started this one at the end of 2018. I don't see it being a finish anytime soon, but that's okay because I love stitching on this one so much. I don't really want it to end soon. But that is the tribute to my father. The only thing that I will say is difficult about this is stitching it on a sheer white fabric with dark colors. All the little fiddly bits of trying, like, if I were using a darker fabric, I would just carry the threads around the tree. But you can't do that because if you did that, this dark mauve would show through the back. So it's literally having to stitch every single one of these as a separate entity and stop and cut the threads so that you're not carrying threads over. That's the only difficult part of it. But I think the colors are so beautiful, it didn't need a wild fabric. It needed something plain to show off the colors and the pattern. So there's that one. It's not the first Karen Kluba pattern I started, but it's the one that has the most meaning to me. Well, the first one does too, but in a different way. This one I had to restart several times to get the fabric to get the right fabric. This one is one that I saw in somebody's Instagram feed and fell in love with it. I had been looking for an eagle for a while because my nephew was working toward his Eagle Scout, which should have it within the year, I would think, because, yeah, I think he was working on picking out his project with his assigned scout leader. So I wanted to do an eagle, and I couldn't. I mean, it seems kind of odd that I couldn't find an eagle that I liked, but I found this one. This is the Kitty and Me Designs Colorful Eagle. She's got a lion that I would love to do too, because, you know, being a Leo, kind of my spirit animal. But I saw that and I was like, I have to do that for Andrew for when he attains his Eagle Scout. And this is the third time I've started it. Third time's the charm. I just couldn't, you know how sometimes you just can't meld the fabric with the pattern. And I started it and I had to frog it twice. And I was just like, no, I think the fabric needs to change. So I had this piece of fabric flare fabric in my, and it's called Americana Star. So I thought this would be very appropriate. And I finally got the start. Finally. So that's half of his beak. And I'm just going to stitch one half of his head and then move over to the other. But, you know, sometimes you just have to find the right... Sometimes certain fabrics don't work with certain projects. Or sometimes, you know, you start on a fabric and then the color, that it's too close to the thread. So you have to, you know, there's always these different reasons that you need to keep trying to find something that fits. So I'm glad that I found that fabric in my stash that fits with the piece, because he is just gorgeous. He speaks to me on all my patriotic levels anyway, but especially for the eagle. I mean, because I just wanted a plain eagle. I didn't necessarily want an eagle with, I mean, there's a lot of eagles for like military stitching and first responders and stuff, which is great, but that just wasn't the kind of pattern I was looking for. I just wanted a plain eagle. So thankfully I found that one. Now this one, I don't remember where I saw this one, but I was so easily enabled. It was completely ridiculous. And I hate to admit how easily led astray I am. But this one I had placed on my notify me list on 123 Stitch when I came back in. This is the Little House Needleworks Heart of America, and it was the 2008 special release. That just checks all my boxes, and I absolutely adore cross-stitched houses. Now, excuse me, up until this point, I had never stitched a house because a lot of vintage samplers have houses in them, and I'm not much into vintage reproduction samplers and things. So I had never stitched a house, but this piece spoke to me. This is a piece of Seraphim fabric. Which one did I use? You've heard me speak of Seraphim before, maybe. They are in Palmer, Mass., which is not too far from where I live. And I don't think I wrote down when I started this or what fabric. No, I usually do. But this is a piece of Seraphim fabric, and they have amazing fabrics, and they're local. So I like to be able to support a local artisan when I can. But there's this, and the word piece doesn't show up terribly well under the house, but that is the called for white thread. I'm using all the specialty threads called for, Classic Colorworks. But that is the first house I have ever stitched, and I love it so much, and I can't wait to stitch another house. I'm actually thinking my next big project will be the anniversary of the heart, which I can't remember if that's Little House Needleworks or if it's somebody else, but it's got a house for every month of the year. Like I need that, but this year I'm not starting anything. Wish lists. That's what wish lists are for. So I started the vine, and I'll put the word Liberty in. But I absolutely adore this so far, and I adore everything about it. The thread, the colors, the fabric, the theme. Every once in a while, you just get that perfect project that just checks all the boxes for you, and you're just like, I don't want to put it down, but I have to go to bed. Can't stay awake all night stitching as much as I wish I could. So there is that. Alrighty, so KSS dot, I don't know which one is. Oh, well, this was the very first Rosewood Manor piece I started. On the Old Glory sampler, which has a bunch of historic flags. The nice thing about this booklet is she gives you the history of the flags and the history of the piece. The John Adams quote is an inscription placed on a mantle in the White House by Franklin Roosevelt from a letter by John Adams to his wife, written immediately after he moved into the White House in 1800. And it says, "I pray to heaven to bestow the best of blessings on this house and all who shall inhabit it. May none but honest and wise may none but honest and wise ever rule under this roof." And then it's got 7 years ago, from sea to shining sea. This one ticks all my boxes. This one is kind of the perfect blend of counting and mindless stitching, because once you start the flags, I need to iron this though before I stitch on it next time. Once you start the flags and get the number of stripes, get the stripes established, you don't have to count. So that's what I've gotten done. Started this a few years back. This may be one of my older WIPs. I think I started this one in 2016. So I just need to give it a good ironing and work on it some. I tend to work on my patriotic pieces on patriotic days, or days like today, MLK Day, the days that are important historically to our country. So I'll probably work on something like that today. And I think for now, I'll show you a couple more, and then I will do part 2, because I'm already at 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I think I'll take this for the next few minutes and show you another couple of my favorites, and then I will do part 2. But like I said, with 43 WIPs, and I love to talk about cross-stitching, it's going to be a long video. This next one was my absolute Achilles heel. I knew I wanted to do it. I saw the pattern on Long Dog Sampler's site when I was purchasing Dilemma. And the dilemma was, for me anyway, that I had everything I needed to start this one right away. I had a half yard of fabric, and I had the silks that I wanted to stitch it with. But I didn't want to start it because it's so big. But as with everything else in life, it's a matter of willpower. Thankfully, I have willpower when it comes to what I eat, because if I had the willpower when it comes to eating that I do when it comes to stitching, I would probably weigh 400 pounds. Not kidding. I mean, I have no willpower when it comes to starting new projects, apparently. I'm good. I can turn down sweets. I can choose healthy over less healthy with food, but when it comes to cross-stitching, I just want to do all the things all the time. So this is Templar Prophecy. 327 by 341 stitches. I did the math. It's over 111,500 stitches. But is it not the most epically cool thing you've ever seen? I mean, this is awesome. And I love how, like, up here with these, like the negative space, you stitch the dark space, so the negative space makes the image. And I love this night down here. So I started this one, when did I start this one? December 6th. I held off till the first part of December of last year. And I'm doing it on 14 count Gothic Picture This Plus with Mrs. Sada's Supernova, which is bright orange and yellow. But I just love the way her silks feel when I stitch with them. It's a very tactile thing for me, I suppose. And I was working on this the other day. Now, I had originally started this on an 18 count piece of this fabric, but it was too hard to see. But believe it or not, with the light I have over there and with 14 count, this fabric is easy to stitch on. And I think it helps too once you get some stitches established. But it is a dark purpley blue with some teal coming through. And that is the silk. I actually had to frog a little bit of this, I guess it was Saturday, because I was one stitch off. But I haven't really had to... Fortunately, I caught it quickly enough that it wasn't too much of a problem. So really all I'm working on right now is this little portion of the border, and then it's going to come down on that first page into this guy here. But I think I could probably monogamously stitch this one, at least until I had to put it in timeout because of something that pissed me off. But it will be very epic, and I love the combination of the thread and the fabric. Because I kind of hope that when I get down here with this splotch of teal there, that there'll be some negative space that shows that part through. So, yeah, I mean, it'll take a long time to do this one, but I absolutely adore it. And like I said, this one was the Lead Me Not Into Temptation because I can find my way there myself project. I saw it. I ordered it. I printed it out. I was like, oh, shoot, now I want to do it. Why the hell did I do that to myself? But yeah, it's like I said, it's a good thing I have willpower when it comes to my health, because I don't have any willpower when it comes to my stitching. That's for damn sure. I am not good about saying no to starting something new. And if I had really thought it through with all the other big projects I have, I probably wouldn't have started that one, but obviously I didn't think it through. Alrighty, let me see. Oh, and speaking of another big-ass project, this one I fell in love with when I saw it on the Heaven and Earth Designs. And sometimes I just go to look at the artwork that the cross-stitch patterns that Heaven and Earth Designs are based on. It's usually not going there to buy a pattern, but I started this one on just a piece of, because with Heaven and Earth Designs, they're full coverage, meaning the entire piece is stitched. It's going to be like a tapestry. So the fabric you stitch it on doesn't really matter because it's not like anything is going to show through. You're not going to have a background. So I just started this on a piece of 14 count Aida. This is a mini, so it's going to be a 21 by 16 on 14 count, which isn't so many, but if you were doing it on 25 count, it would be a 10 by 7. I think I did the math right, because you divide the width by 14 and add 4 for borders, and then you divide the height by 14 and add 4 for borders. I'm pretty sure, given the borders, but is that not, I mean, I love dragons so much. I've loved dragons since I was a kid. So I just started in the upper left-hand corner, and I got 300 stitches in for the sky. I mean, not much to see there so far. But the nice thing about the mini is that you'll get into the actual meat and potatoes of the project sooner. Because I started up here, so I'm stitching the sky. But if I just go down the columns, I'll get to the tree branch. And then as I work over across the tree, it'll be quicker. I mean, there'll be a lot of sky to fill in, but that's okay. So a lot of people park their threads when they do heids, but I don't have time to deal with that. So I cross-country stitch, meaning I just stitch like, you know, but I do it in 10 by 10 blocks. So I'll stitch all of one color in a 10 by 10 block and then stitch the next until I fill in those 100 stitches. So that's how I got 300 stitches already done, because I just stitched down the block. So I stitched the first 100 and then, you know, picked up with the second 100. So, but parking where you bring your threads through to the front and then you switch out, I mean, that's just too much. Besides, if you can cross-country a height, I think you've accomplished something. So maybe it's more like a challenge to say, okay, I'm not following any set convention. I'm just going for it. Last one I'm going to show is my other Haid, which is amazing. I could use her for the diversity and inclusion cell that the Sunshine Stitchers, the diversity inclusion hashtag that they've started, or the, it's diversity inclusion, oh, and the representation matters hashtag that they've started. This one is still a mini. It's 75,000 stitches, so it's smaller than the other one I just showed you. But this is Mini Crystal Angel. and I'm stitching her for a friend of mine. And isn't she just, I love how she's not looking at you, but you can still feel her strength and her power coming through. And those blues and purples are freaking amazing. So again, yes, full coverage. This is just a piece of a pale blue linen. I can't remember. It's just a Zweigart. Oh, I started this one on 4/30/19. 32 count blue gray Belfast linen from 123 Stitch. So this, I've gotten almost 800 stitches in it out of 75,000, but that's the background. But yeah, she is powerful. I love her. So yeah, if I do post a picture of this one on Instagram, I'll probably use the Sunshine Stitchers hashtags, because I suppose it's one of those things that I never thought about before, but there aren't a lot of patterns that represent people of color, which I don't see why there aren't. Maybe it's because people of color were not traditionally the designers. I don't know. But I mean, when I think about it, it's like, well, why is it that way? You know? And I mean, I know a lot of people throughout the crafting world will just swap out skin tones and make a pattern fit as a person of color, but that takes time. That's difficult. Sometimes when you find a color you think works, then you have to pull it out. So why shouldn't it be that there are designs for people of color too? I mean, I don't know why it hasn't been a thing before now. So the Sunshine Stitchers really made me think, oh, geez, that should be a thing. Why is it not? So yeah, I'll probably post pictures of that on Instagram under the diversity and the inclusion. Is it diversity inclusion is the hashtag, and then representation matters? I'll probably post under those because, I mean, you know, she's a beautiful angel, and we should have more artwork like that in the cross-stitch world. And it shouldn't be that someone just has to swap out colors, because that's a pain in the ass. I did that with Rain Dance, which I'll show you in my next video, and as much as I like the color conversion I did, it was difficult. It was hard to figure it out. So why should you have to convert skin tones? I mean, it's not like when you look at the DMC threads, there aren't plenty of ranges of skin tones for people of color. I mean, there are as many browns as there are blues and purples and reds in the DMC color line. So I don't know why it's not a thing. Hopefully it will be. Anyway, I have talked for an hour and a half, so I'm going to shut down this video and I will do part 2. I'm very pleased to have this microphone that will help you actually hear me, because when I went back and listened to my previous attempt at part 1, only young dogs could have actually heard me speak, because I forgot the cardinal rule that laptop microphones are really pretty crappy, the built-in ones. So now that I have my new microphone, I think it should go well from now on. I love having the built-in webcam, so I don't have to worry about any of that. But we shall see how this all works out in the future. Hopefully this year I will be able to do more Flosstube videos now that I've got a better computer and a better setup. That's my plan anyway. Plus, I think it'll hold me accountable for making no new starts progress if I try to do more videos this year. So hopefully it'll all work out. Thanks for hanging with me this long. I will try not to be that long-winded on the next video. But as always, if you are a stitching viewer of mine, I wish you happy stitching and a happy life. And if you're one of my friends who just comes here because you know this is what I do, I appreciate your support too, and I love you all. And until next time, guys.